thank you so much. I think this is the most awaited session of the day. There are a lot of people who've told me they want to ask questions. And last time I remember I forgot to get people involved, so we'll keep some time for questions from the audience. So thank you so much. We've had a day where we've heard Ram Temple several times. So the narrative seems to be with the ruling party. They seem to be telling the story of India somehow better than India. What do you think?
Look, I mean, we've had a particular narrative of India for some time, and I think we've told it rather well. I'm proud of that narrative, which is that here is this extraordinary country which has such astonishing diversity within it, geographical, ethnic, linguistic, you name it. And yet we've been able to hold together through a shared history, a shared concept of civilization, as well as, of course, a diverse democracy in which every Indian, whatever their caste, their creed, religion, language, region of birth, color of skin, all of that makes no difference. They all enjoy the same benefits. I would not say that has lost its appeal. I would concede that perhaps because it's been going on for so long, people began to take it for granted and were more receptive to a different approach. I was interested to hear my friend Ram Madhav essentially subscribing to the same view of India that I've just summarized, but attributing it as well to the policies of his government, which is where we have a disagreement.
But it's a profound and fundamental disagreement. I mean, it's a completely different narrative from what the Congress has been espousing so far.
I think it's a very profound disagreement because really the question is, do you want an India which is genuinely for everyone, or do you want an India where some people are empowered to feel that they have a greater claim on the citizenship, on the prerogatives issued by the state, and on the institutions of public celebration than others? I mean, frankly, there have been some very moving sort of articles as well as private messages from Muslims about how they have been made to feel in the new India over the last 10 years.
Muslims, and this I think a lot of non-Muslims as well.
Well, yeah, India. Many liberals have begun to feel that perhaps, they're not particularly welcome either. Some of us are still staying and fighting the good fight. But the truth is that there is a difference between an India that is available to all and an India that's available only to a few, or an India that really wants to focus all the time on what unites us versus an India that privileges what matters to some but divides others. So, I mean, these are fundamental differences.
But why is the India Alliance or the Congress Party, as the leading member of that alliance, not able to tell this story as powerfully as the BJP does? And you will agree that they tell it it better.
No, I think that there is no doubt that the story has been told for a very long time, and therefore it's not seen as fresh and new. Whereas certainly the new BJP version of Indianness that we've particularly seen articulated in the last 10 years and more so in the last 5 has had the advantage, if you like, of being fresh to people's minds, being articulated robustly by the Prime Minister with his famous oratory, and at the same time has the benefit, as Mr. Ram Madhav didn't hesitate to remind us, of majority support in Parliament. And with all of this, inevitably that narrative has been getting a fair amount of dominance. The media, too, has been complicit in privileging one version at the expense of others. I mean, even if you just read the articles in the Indian media over the Ram Janmabhoomi in the last couple of days and contrast it with the international media on the same subject, you can see that there is a dominance of one narrative in India, even though there may be other narratives that the rest of the world is reading.
So logic says that a particular party, perhaps the ruling party, will return to power. Is there an underlying emotion, an underlying mood that people are not reading, that you have, or the India Alliance has somehow tapped into, which is why you see Mr. Gandhi going from one state to another?
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, when you sent me the invitation for the session, I think the subtitle said something about, are we going to see a revival of the spirit of 77 or something? No, I think in all fairness, the spirit of 77 was an overwhelming rejection of a particular government, and I'm not suggesting that there'll be that kind of rejection. But I would talk about the spirit of 2004, when you similarly had a BJP government that everyone assumed was a shoo-in for re-election, and that was astonished to be reduced after the elections to being in opposition. I don't see why that can't happen again, not least because this government did astonishingly well in 2019, particularly in the backs of Pulwama and Balakot, and there aren't too many states where they can even do better. I mean, you look at the fact that they won every seat in Haryana, every seat in Rajasthan, every seat in Gujarat, all but one in Madhya Pradesh, all but one in Bihar, 18 seats in
Almost the
Bengal.
whole of UP.
I mean, where do they go up? There is no up to go. So all they can do in all these places is lose seats. They may not lose a whole lot. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. That depends on how effectively the election goes. But the fact is they will lose seats. And that's why I feel that some of the complacency that's being expressed in ruling party circles is unaccompanied by any logical explanation of where they are going to increase their seats. So they're certainly not going to increase in South India. There's absolutely no evidence whatsoever of anything but a complete sweep by the constituent parties of the India Alliance, or at least by parties that are not BJP or NDA. In the circumstances, I do believe the BJP is going to really be in for a rude shock. They may be dominating the media waves, they may be getting a lot of publicity, but I'm not prepared to concede this election as your question implied I should.
But what makes you think otherwise, apart from the mathematics of it?
Well, the mathematics are part of it, but there is a question that was rather brilliantly answered by Bill Clinton's campaign manager in 1992.
Where's the beef?
When he said, "It's the economy, stupid." I
It's
mean,
the economy.
that was the slogan that they ran on. And the fact is that, when you look at our country today, on the one hand, the government boasts of being the largest successful growth story amongst the major economies of the world. And on the other hand, we find that unemployment is at record levels and that inflation means that most people can't afford to buy at the market what they were buying this time last year. Second, the government says, or Niti Aayog says on behalf of the government, there are only 15 crore poor people in India, but somehow the government needs to give 81 crores people free food grains. I mean, there's something completely wrong with the logic of that. I'm sure the students listening at the back can tell the difference. You're looking at a situation where the government has disappointed large numbers of people. I mean, I know young people who voted for the BJP in 2014, thinking that there was going to be an abundance of jobs because that was what they were promised, and they still don't have a job. Why would they vote for BJP again? Similarly, people who voted for silly reasons like expecting the BJP to curb petrol and diesel prices, not realizing, of course, that there are international implications to that. But they realized that the prices only went up under the BJP. Even when international prices went down, the BJP government raised taxes in order to fill the state coffers. You've got one story after another of the economy. The final issue is, isn't there a problem with most people feeling the pinch when it comes to their personal income, either because they don't have employment or their employment doesn't pay well enough to cope with the economy of today? So we want to turn to people and say, do you feel you're better off than you were 10 years ago? And if not, why do you want to vote for this government to come back? National pride or Hindu pride, all of those things seem to be the principal message of the BJP. But it's time that voters realize that the election is also an opportunity to vote in your self-interest.
But you can tell the voters that, but they will still vote according to what they want.
That's a bit patronizing, Kaveri. How can you expect people to be constantly voting?
You saw in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, you expected them to go your way. Look what happened. People rallied around religion, I presume. Or is there any other explanation for why the Congress lost?
Well, yeah, I mean, Rajasthan, unfortunately, there was a bit of anti-incumbency, and our party was perceived as somewhat divided. And I must say that the one thing the BJP is very good at is the sort of last-mile campaigning, the last-mile knocking on the doors and getting people to turn out to vote. Because they have become essentially a cadre party. They rely strongly on the RSS cadres. But people, turn up there. I mean, I can tell you in my own constituency, which is the BJP's strongest constituency in Kerala, that it's an absolute fact that people who are voting for me are telling me they've received 5 visits from BJP squads in the last election. 5. Even though they said that, no, we are going to vote for Tharoor, no, they still came and said, let's try and persuade you. So they've got that strength. Remember, in Rajasthan, Kaveri, it was just a 2% vote difference.
What about
but
Madhya
that's what
Pradesh?
mattered. Madhya Pradesh was in many ways a mystery to all of us because we expected to have done better, and many of the polls showed us doing better. Chhattisgarh was another shocker. We thought we were going to win Chhattisgarh, but it seems that we faltered in one area, and that's the Adivasi belt. We lost 15 seats in the ST areas, which we had won last time. So there are, as you do more
which you
detailed...
ought to have won, given your narrative.
Exactly. So we have to do much more detailed sort of
Don't tell me
post-mortem
you've
studies.
still not done
No,
it.
they're being done, I'm sure. It's just that I've been in Kerala much of the last few months.
It's been quite a few months. No, so this is it, there's either the card
It's been a month and a half, Kaveri. Don't get so carried away. But anyway,
Well, there's a month and a half, I guess, left for the elections as well. So I don't think you guys have much time.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
the point being that there's always some reason. It's either the cadre and they're very good at the last mile connectivity. We all know that. They're great at booth management. So, the Congress knows all this and the opposition parties know all this. Surely they must be having a checklist by now of things to do to win the next election.
No, but the truth is the Congress, the legacy of being a big tent party, one where people are attracted to a broader message, is partly also that we don't have the kind of sort of stormtroopers the BJP and in other places like Kerala, the CPM, or in Tamil Nadu, the DMK can call on. We don't really have a full-time, dedicated, sort of 100% all the time, giving up everything, to the extent that other parties seem to have.
Some would argue even your leaders are not full-time.
Well, look, I'm not going to go there. That's not fair.
But it is a fact.
No. Look, everyone has their own style and hard work. And I must say that there's no doubt that for anyone in the Congress, this is a hugely important election and that we all have to pull out all the stops and work very hard for it.
As I said, it's all very well said. But what is being done on the ground? There are people perhaps who would like to vote for the Congress. And they turn around and say, oh, but. Because at the end, it is also a bit of a personality contest, isn't it?
Well, I'm not denying there has sort of become a sort of, as you say, a personality contest element to our elections. It started really in the states in many ways, where I guess in this state, if you wanted Jayalalitha to be chief minister, it didn't matter to you who the local candidate was, as long as he was running on her symbol, that sort of thing. And that's very much the case with Mr. Modi.
You can't blame Tamil Nadu for that. It's been there for...
No, it's been on and off. It started, some would argue, with Indira Gandhi in 71, and then, but it was also off for some time. When Rajiv Gandhi won his huge victory in 84, there were other factors, and Prabhu has written about them. I certainly, in 89, it wasn't VP Singh's charisma. There were issues and principles they ran on, and you could go down election after election. So it's not always been that way. But certainly for the BJP, this is the terrain they want to fight on, and it's Modi, Modi, Modi all the time. And our counter-argument is, in a country of so many people, 140 crore people, on the one hand, you're being offered I, me, myself kind of approach, and on the other hand, you're being offered we. There was a wonderful slogan that we came up with in 2014 that I wish we'd use more, and I hope we will use again, which said in Hindi, main nahi hum.
Right.
It's not about me, it's about us. And that us is what the people of India, I think, should feel a stake in. We're going to try and get that message out too.
Talking about slogans, you mentioned 2004, and you had a wonderful slogan in 2004. You had India shining on the other side. The other side, you had the Aam Aadmi, You were before the Aam Aadmi Party came.
Well, they took it from us.
And it took it from you. But it was really the story of the Aam Aadmi that you were telling. Why have you not come up with a slogan?
Well, the slogans, I'm sure there are experts.
There's a Nyaya Yatra. Now you've already tried and tested in 2019. Main nahi hum, that also you've tried and tested in 2014.
I'm sure there'll be more slogans, don't worry. People are working on those right now. But my answer to your question is, even what I talked about the economy is about the Aam Aadmi. When we talk about
but you can't talk about
price
the Aam Aadmi
rise
now
and unemployment, we're talking about the Aam
Party.
Aadmi.
Yeah, but what do you call this? You're the wordsmith.
Well, English slogans won't go very far in this election. Let's see what they come up with in Hindi. I'm sure they'll come up with a nice phrase.
I just feel the lack of a sense of urgency.
No,
I
that's
think
not true.
people who want an alternative are perhaps a little more have that sense of urgency a little more than the Congress does. Is that a fact?
No, I wouldn't agree with that. I think there is a strong sense of urgency. I can only speak for my own, what I've seen myself, for example, in my state of Kerala, where we are very much gearing up everywhere. There's this tremendous sense of anticipation and preparedness. I've been holding meetings in my constituency right up to and yesterday with party workers, with our office bearers up and down the chain. We're all gearing up. And in my own view, I think the BJP is not likely to wait as is rather misleading story today suggested, to April to call the election. I'm convinced that once Mr. Modi has gone and done his second temple run by inaugurating the Hindu Mandir in Abu Dhabi on the 14th of February, I think immediately after that they'll call the elections. They'll want to. I'm sure their campaign is going to be Modi as the Hindu Hridaya Samrat. That's the message they want to give across northern India.
And your counter?
Our counter is, as I said, the economy. It's about what people, the Aam Aadmi of this country, are going through in their daily lives, and how we need a government that pays attention to that.
The problem being that the Hindu Hriday Samrat works very well in the north, which has more seats, unfortunately. And perhaps there's a fundamental disconnect with the way the south votes from the north. Is that a fact?
There is a fundamental disconnect. Some would argue it's not new. I mean, even in 1977, when Indira Gandhi lost the north comprehensively, she won the south comprehensively. So, you know, this is not totally new in India, but there are important factors today, because some of the elements that the south is rejecting are elements that I really worry about, because, you know, we keep talking about the unity of India, and there is a lot of divisiveness coming out of the BJP, which will alienate the South. The emphasis on Hindi, for example, which we understand is the language of half the population of this country, but nonetheless cannot be thrust down the throats of people in this state, for example. That's a divisive agenda. The extraordinary decision of the government, aided and abetted by the last Finance Commission, to significantly reduce allocations to states. So most of them, in fact, all the southern states are giving far more to the center than they're getting back, and they're getting back much less by way of allocations than they were used to, which means they've had to cut back on their... That's becoming a sore point as well. And then in 2026, the 91st Amendment lapses. The 91st Amendment is the amendment which froze all the Lok Sabha constituencies on the basis of the 1971 census. And once that lapses, whereas Mr. Vajpayee, the first time it lapsed, renewed it, the 42nd Amendment, he renewed this provision as the 91st Amendment, and they did so unanimously in Parliament. This time around, the BJP has made it very clear they have no intention of reviving it. They are going to reapportion states and seats in the states, I beg your pardon. They're going to reapportion them, which is in such a way that will give, obviously, the more populous states of the Hindi belt an enormous majority. Some say an automatic two-thirds majority in Parliament. That could be extremely, extremely divisive and worrying for the South. So there will be issues on which the South will have fundamental interests at stake relating to the future of India, which we will need to negotiate from a position of popular support and strength.
Will it be enough?
Well, I mean, the fact is you can only win the states you have. I mean, the truth is that I'm hoping that the North will also heed the message of unity, of inclusion, of nyaya, of justice, indeed also respond to our concerns about unemployment, our concerns about inflation. All of these messages should resonate in the North and the Northeast and the West and the East as well. So I'm still hoping. I mean, even though it may be that there will be some states in which we will not, in fact, have an agreement to share seats, even some of those who are not inclined to share seats have said that after the elections they're quite willing to support an India Alliance government in Delhi. We saw this in 2004 when in my state the CPM sort of crushed the Congress in pretty much every seat, but then came to Delhi and supported the UPA government. So there are all these formulae possible. I am not prepared to give up the ghost in such a hurry, Kaveri. I think we've got a very good chance.
But for that, your party has to engage with other parties. Is it doing enough of that?
We are. I mean, you know, each state has its own logic. That's the other extraordinary thing about Indian politics, particularly since the advent of regional parties. There are issues in different states. Certainly, for example, we can just look here and next door. In Kerala, it's unthinkable that the CPM and the Congress could ever work together on seat sharing. Yeah. But right next door in Tamil Nadu, CPM, CPI, Congress, and DMK are all allies, and there's no debate or dispute or problem at all. So each state has its own story. I would not worry unduly about that. I think we should get agreement where we can and fight as hard and effectively as we can where we can't get agreement.
Can you tell your leader to stop walking and start talking?
He's talking too. No, he's talking too. Come on, he's been giving press conferences practically every day.
Yeah, but he should talk to his fellow leaders, no? Not to the people. They're okay with him. He has to talk to
Well,
his
if the
fellow
people are okay with him, then he's got the election in the bag.
but he's up against someone who's omnipresent, ubiquitous, everywhere, all the time. So it's
Thanks
a
partly
tough,
to the media as well.
yeah,
huh,
well,
Kaveri?
yeah,
You can turn it
blame the
back to you.
messenger. Go ahead. But I think the last point before I'd like to open it to the audience is this question of Hindutva and soft Hindutva, that you cannot fight. And I think your colleague Manoj Jha put it beautifully when he said you cannot fight Hindutva with soft Hindutva.
Of course.
There's no such thing. But the Congress seems to not know, should it take credit, should it not take credit for Ram Mandir, should it go, should it not? I mean, instead of waffling, just, say what you want to do
No, I
right
think
up front.
we've tried to make this very clear, and the message somehow hasn't always got through. We do not subscribe to Hindutva, which is a political ideology. Those of us who are Hindu subscribe to Hinduism, not Hindutva, soft or hard or any other kind of consistency. The argument that I wanted to make very simply is a lot depends on your understanding of Hinduism. Ram was kind enough to mention my book, Why I'm a Hindu. If you read that from cover to cover, you don't find anything there that supports the approach of Hindutva. It is about Hinduism, as Vivekananda taught it, inclusive, accepting,
Yes, but
embracing
the BJP
differences.
has this ability to appropriate even Vivekananda.
They've tried. But I mean, anybody who's read Vivekananda knows how fraudulent this appropriation is. And the truth is that, it's this whole message of inclusion and acceptance of difference that differentiates Hinduism from Hindutva. We absolutely accept everyone's right to seek the divine in their own way.
Yet it took you so long to make up your mind to appear, to whether to go to the inauguration
No, that was a
or
political issue, Kaveri. Very simply, the invitation put every opposition party in a cleft stick. If you accept, you're playing into the BJP's hands and becoming supporting actors in a Narendra Modi lead role production. If you deny, you're going to be accused of being anti-Hindu. What kind of choice is that? I think it was quite wise that they said, no, we'll go to the temple if we are Hindu and we want to go. We'll go when it's convenient and not when it's politically suitable for the BJP. I must say that that's the stand that I took myself, even though I wasn't invited. But when I was asked, that's what I said. But at the same time, as a Hindu, I'm not prepared to relinquish my Ram to the BJP. Why should I concede Lord Ram to the BJP? I mean, I've been praying to a sort of portrait or painting or whatever of Ram since my childhood. And I'm not going to suddenly start saying, no, this only belongs to them. That's not acceptable. So for me and for many others like me, Hinduism is something we're proud of. It's part of who we are. It's what makes our connection to the larger cosmos relevant. But at the same time, we reject the particular political variant of it that is called Hindutva.
But that's the point. You accept the religious Ram, but the political Ram has been so politicized that it's now seems out of your hands, right?
Well, look, I would like to think as a Hindu that it's never out of my hands or any other Hindu's hands. It's up to us how we honor and respect that. When Mahatma Gandhi spoke of Ram Rajya, he made it very explicitly clear what he meant. A land of justice, of prosperity, of equality, of fairness to all, not just Hindus. He specifically said, not just to Hindus.
But his Raghupati Raghav Rajaram also had Ishwar Allah Teruna.
That's right, which is not there in the Hindutva version thereof.
Yeah. So there's a very different Ram that you're talking to here.
I'm afraid so.
Yes. Any questions from the audience?
Hi, Shashi.
Hi, Shankar.
So as an author of Why I'm a Hindu, I would have liked to know how you would have drafted the rejection letter or the acceptance letter to the invitation. But I leave you to dodge that however you want to. My question is more substantial. You said that there is it's the economy stupid 92 Bill Clinton campaign. And then your plank just now is Nyay. It was 2019. Nyay had some very interesting ideas, themes in it in 2019. But none of your states did anything about Nyay. In the states that, in the states
Chhattisgarh, for example, actually announced and implemented something called a Rajiv Gandhi Nyay program, Nyay Yojana, but it was not the full-fledged Nyay that the 2019 election manifesto had promised. Because every state has to adjust its projects to the capacity and reality of its own budgetary
No,
actuality, and that's what happened. Yeah.
So I had a second part to that question,
Sure.
which is basically it had one component of it was 1/3 of government jobs for women, which all the states could have done. They didn't do it. It also had a component of inflation management, whatever. Now, if you look at the track record of Congress governments, they don't seem to have done better. Track record on unemployment, they don't seem to have done better. So what gives the confidence? What is that one factor that gives you confidence that you will even win in the South?
Oh, I don't think anyone is seriously doubting that we will win in the South. When I say we, I mean the non-NDA party.
So I'm saying South because, okay, you have a ghost or a whiskers chance in South. But, I mean, in the North, are you being heard?
In the North, the issue is indeed that we need to get our message heard, and we are trying to do that. I mean, a formal election campaign is yet to begin. It'll come. But I will say to you, Shankar, that as far as the Congress government's not doing better is concerned, I think you'll find that's not entirely fair. For example, Chhattisgarh did remarkably well, particularly in terms of support for farmers, which is why the election defeat was a shock, and it turned out that we lost specifically seats in the tribal belt, where God knows what went wrong, because again, there had been a significant tribal outreach. But that was the specific factor there that turned 15 seats. If you look at Himachal, when the Congress came to power, they were very quick to fill the government vacancies, which we've been talking about as one simple, immediate step that any government can take to address the absurd amounts of unemployment figures for educated, qualified people. Beg your pardon?
Gehlot didn't do.
I think in Rajasthan there were other issues, and perhaps in some cases some posts may not have been filled. I can't claim to know in full detail about every state. But I am saying that many of the things that you were questioning have indeed been done by state governments. At the national level, I mean, I'm fairly confident that when we announce a pledge like filling all government vacancies within 3 months, or whatever the pledge is going to be, the manifesto is being drafted, it isn't out yet. We will implement it. We haven't got a bad track record. When we were in government under UPA, the promises made were kept. And I think that's something that you folks can go back and see. What's more, in some cases, they were exceeded. If you look at that entire panoply of rights-based legislation the Congress passed in its 2 terms, you know, everything from right to information, right to food security, right to education, right to information,
Food security.
to employment, rural unemployment being tackled. All of these things went even beyond what we had promised to address, and we did so effectively. So I don't think the Congress's track record warrants that much skepticism.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Sir, my question to you is, why do you think BJP is having an edge over Congress? Is it because they are behaving like corporates and Congress is behaving like a political party? How do you strategize it for the upcoming election? And would love to see how you put it into one word.
No, I mean, at least 2 words, money and muscle power. They have both in greater quantities than we do. And indeed, even in the last election, I think it's fair to say that the BJP outspent all the other parties put together. They have an enormous amount of resources available to them. Even the so-called electoral bonds, which are currently being challenged in the Supreme Court, 90-odd% of the electoral bonds in the last election, 95, I thought, 93, whatever, went to the ruling party. So we are in a situation where they are outgunning us literally. And you know, democratic elections, you can't do guerrilla warfare when you're being outgunned. You have to somehow find the firepower to stand up and resist. And we did so as effectively as we could. We're going to have to do better. But I think ultimately, that alone is never enough, which is why the question the organizers asked me when they invited me about 77 holds. I mean, 77, the government had control of everything, including the media. And yet they lost because the people said, we've had enough. In the case of 24, our message is to ask people to look at themselves. Don't just look at the campaign messages. Don't just look at what people are saying. Ask yourself, are you better off? Are you leading a better life? Have you benefited from the policies of this government? If not, why vote for them? That's the message that I believe is going to resonate very strongly with people. And that is where much of our hope lies.
You were actually speaking about secularism, and the chairperson was actually stating that the North was voting because of this Hindutva, and they see Modi as the Hindu Hriday Samrat. Don't you think that we are simply rubbing off the fact that there's some sort of welfare politics being done. They have actually delivered 10 crore toilets for that matter. And what about your alliance partners like Udayanidhi who are calling out for eradication of Hinduism? Don't you think that this creates the necessity for Hindutva to protect Hindus? And what's your take on conversion, religious conversion?
That is,
There's
I
a
think,
lot of
three
questions.
We can only take one of them and then one more.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
you choose.
I'll take the first two
Yeah.
since they seem to go together. I mean, the truth is that there is welfare politics being played, and it's particularly ironic because in 2014, Mr. Modi was scathing about the UPA's welfare schemes, about its povertarianism, about what he claimed was spending a fortune of taxpayers' money on digging ditches, which was his summary of the Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Scheme. And every one of those comments he made in 2014, he has eaten crow. He has given more money to welfare than previous governments because the need is there. And now this 81 crore sort of free grain for people could also be described as a monument to his government's failure that so many people need free food. So all of these things suggest that there is going to be a competitive welfareism by the government and by the opposition pointing out to the holes in that.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
With the whole narrative on Ram Rajya, Ram Mandir consecration and the election, right? I feel like we are forgetting about the Manipur issue. And sir, with the incumbent government not doing anything and literally waiting for the situation to solve on its own, it's been almost a year. And the people I feel are looking alternate ways since election is coming. And my question is, what would be the take of Congress if it comes to power in Manipur to solve the current issue?
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that one can't sit here in an off-the-cuff sort of give you specific things. When we're in opposition, we point out what we would not have done. We would not have allowed the police armories to be looted by various insurgent groups. We would not have delayed so long in calling in the armed forces to curb this kind of irregular violence. We would not have allowed the separation of the state into two essentially no-go ethnic zones where Kukis are scared to even venture to Imphal to take a flight because they're afraid they'll be killed before they get on the plane. This kind of atmosphere in the country where Meiteis don't feel free or safe going to the east either of Manipur, all of this we would not have allowed to happen. What we can do is, we have to start off where we find ourselves. So if we come to power there, we will have to start afresh. But because we don't have the baggage of the bad decisions of the previous government, and because we have had leaders who have gone there, unlike the Prime Minister who never even set foot in Manipur, we believe we will approach the issue with greater credibility than the present government has been able to do. And with that, we should be able to bring people together, we certainly hope. But it's certainly gone a long way down the wrong way because of the mishandling by both the center and the state governments.
Hello, sir. Hi, I'm Varnika Thakur from the New Indian Express. So my question is, because we were talking about secularism, so my question is, do you think it is proper for India's most powerful government official, which is PM Modi in this case, to officiate a religious function as a yajman or a patron?
No, on this, our view is very clear. We don't think it's proper. And what is more, there's also Article 27 of the Constitution, which specifically forbids the spending of any taxpayer money on the promotion of any religion, which is one of the reasons why Nehruji, pointing to the Constitution, didn't want any money to be given by the government, either of Delhi or of Saurashtra, where Somnath was located. Saurashtra was then a state, to the function. And everything was done on personal initiative and personal cost. Of course, the protection of the president when he went in a personal capacity was still the state's responsibility, but no money was actually given for the religious ceremony. Now, these are important issues. I think from our point of view, we believe that there is undoubtedly more than one view of secularism, and I will share Ram's point that we didn't become secular because a word was added in the Constitution. But I will stress that we became secular because the Constitution already granted and guaranteed freedom of worship, freedom of the right to practice a faith, to propagate a faith, and indeed not to have taxes spent on any faith. And all of these things, which are very much in the Articles 25 to 28 of the Constitution, make us secular, whether the word secular is in the preamble or not. And that was Dr. Ambedkar's point as well, that the structure of the Constitution is de facto secular. We don't need to say it. So I do want to stress that there may be disputes and debates about all of this, but I think the Constitution speaks for itself. And at some point, the judiciary may have to find itself ruling on all these matters if it comes to them. But certainly as a political party, we were deeply troubled by the Prime Minister's very, very prominent role in the Prana Pratishtha. I am not aware, though Ram says that the President performed a similar ritual, I'm not aware of any non-priest having had this kind of prominence in such a major event as the consecration of a temple.
Thank you all very much. Have to call it a day. I think you will have to take yet another session with them. I monopolized you too much, perhaps. But thank you very much. It was always, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.